So typically with a sketch like this, I'd do all the line work first. But in this case, I'm going to do some painting on the top, and then I'm going to put some line work in afterwards. Now, as you can see from the reference image, which should be in that corner there, it's quite an interesting picture. There's only a few primary colours. There is a green, some greens in the behind the station, and then the station is not necessarily coloured a lot, but there is a few. There's obviously the sky blue on the floor, and then a cream paint, and then the platform itself. There is a few colour pops in this, which are some of the signs, which I'm going to have to think about how to do really. I want to make sure that I leave some space for those. So what I might do, because this sketch I did a while ago, I might just remind myself of some of these spaces. There's a sign there, and there's the ticket office sign there. I definitely don't want to paint over those because I want these areas to, there's a sign, there's another door here, and there's a sign there that comes down that says station 2 on it. So those are my colour pops that I want to make sure I keep really clean. So whatever I paint on here, I'll try and avoid those. So what I'm going to use here is a bit of a wet in wet type technique. So using this technique is quite loose. There's a sort of element of serendipity about it. But the best way to do it is to be quick, be gestural, and actually not think too much. Sometimes in life it pays not to think too much. So the first thing I'm going to do is go in and isolate the foreground, the back layer, from the front layer. So I'm going to choose a line. This is why that pencil sketch is quite useful in a weird way. So I'm going to fade that off just this way. I should really rub out that pencil line, but it doesn't matter. And then I'm going to think about my skies and how I'm going to do my skies. So just putting some clean water, cleanish water up here. I think because the main focus is on this side, what I'll probably do is push the sky up more this side to give it a little bit of balance. So again, just try and keep the colour palette as simple as possible. Use a bit of French ultramarine and a little bit of cobalt blue mixed together. And then just start in here, dab a bit on. Maybe a little bit more of that French ultramarine. So again, I'm really trying to show you that you don't have to be too specific with your colours, or you can just be quite loose. So there's this guy there. The reason why I've left a bit more space there is because I want to put some more leaves and things behind, but I'm not super bothered about too much detail in those. So again, I'm using this Daniel Smith colour. This is called a sap green, and it's a direct green. Now, I think mixing your own greens makes an awful lot of sense, and you really should. But that said, for something like this, when you don't have a lot of time and you want to be quite speedy, it's quite fun not to do that. So I'm adding this sap green on, directly on top of that blue. I might even put a little splash on the corner there. And then this space here, as it fades off into the distance, can be a little bit softer. Now, because we're working very wet in wet here, it might be fun to add in a little bit of yellow in some of the highlights on the tops of the trees. And what that's going to do is that's going to bloom out. Now, one of the things about using two yellows here, and it was a Liz Steele tip, I'm just going to clean my brush and pull some of that out the gutter there. You see how that got sucked up? Is you can keep one yellow as a clean yellow. I've made a mistake there. And the other yellow as a mucky yellow. Make sure I don't put too much. There we go. So I think I'll do that. I don't want it to be the main focus of the image, so I don't actually want it to be in any way like hard shapes. I want it to be quite soft in the background, and if I put much more ink, particularly sort of watercolor in there, particularly in that wash, it's going to go a bit cakey. You can see it's starting to granulate up a little bit, which is gorgeous. Right, so in the foreground here we have the ballast and the platform. Now the platform has a little bit of this natural sienna in some of the lighter areas, and then there is some of that in the ballast, so I'm just going to pick up a bit of that and just drop that in there. Again, we're working quite quickly and quite messily. It's a bit too messily. You see I've got some spots on here. If you don't want those there, which actually on the building I really don't, so you can just dab them out. It doesn't get rid of them completely, but it means you won't spread that around when you come to painting that area. So by working on this area now and leaving a gap between, I'm giving that a bit of a chance to dry out. Now this Van Dyke brown, which is a darker brown, this can come in for like a shadow area underneath the platform, and also use it to add some variation in the tone on the ballast. Again, I'm being a bit of a messy puppy here. I don't mind that in the sky, actually. I'll leave it. There we go. And then the platform itself is a grey. Now, if any of you watch my channel, you'll know that I often use a Van Dyke and an ultramarine blue to make a very flat grey. Well, it's quite a blue grey. And in this case, I'm going to do the same. And we're going to add that along here. Now we have a little, there's various bits of sort of street furniture here, isn't there? I'm trying to leave a little gap because there is a white line on the edge of the platform. Again, it can be a bit too precious. Now that's almost the same colour as the sky, but I'm not going to put the sky in yet. I'm actually going to go and put a little bit of wrong colour, a little bit of green detail in this corner just to fill up that. There he is. There we go. Right, so at this stage, if you're outdoors, you'd probably let that dry before going in and doing a bit more, but I have the benefit of electricity. So I'm going to quickly hair dry that, and then we'll go back in with a bit more detail. So potentially I think I might have missed out filming a step there because I had a bit of an issue with my phone. But you get the idea. That's pretty much the basic. That's pretty much the basic painting done. One of the things, the reasons why I perhaps don't use this technique as much as I use the ink first technique is because it can end up being a little bit overly fiddly. Partly because you end up going paint, pen, paint, pen, highlights, paint, pen. Whereas with pen first, it tends to be all the pen, paint phase, then pen. But it's good to show you that there's a different way of doing things. So I'm going to choose quite a thin fine liner here. This is a 0.2, not the thinnest. And using the reference drawing, I'm going to start laying in not only the shape of things, but I'm going to start laying in the textures of things. So if you look at this gable end, we've got several elements running up there. And then where it comes back down, there's a shape that runs into the gutter. Here we have a vent. which I'm going to simplify. It's a series of louvers like that. And then there's quite a lot of perspective in this, weirdly, even though it's just a little shed. And there's also quite a lot of texture and detail when you look quite closely, because a lot of it's sort of tongue and groove construction. Here's that corner. So these lines run like this, and as the perspective changes, they're going to become higher. Like that. Here you go. So we have a sign that I forgot to leave, and the doorknob. And then here there is a little sort of fascia piece on the bottom. And there's a little step that comes out there. This phase is actually probably quite a long phase, really, I think. So here we have a sandwich board. Planter. With some plants in. A bench. Again, just super quick sketching this. I'm not being too fussy about form. I used to live in Gothland, so I know Grumont Station very well, and sort of grew up in Whitby. So I'm pretty familiar with this. So again, a sort of continuous line technique. I'm doing some of these plants falling out of this planter, and then I think this is some kind of bin. Right, so we have a window here. So what's next? I would say the roof line. So the roof line consists of this sort of shape, and as you get further down, I'm bringing those elements closer together to exaggerate that roof line. And then we're going to come down there, and then we have that. So those come down at that angle. Sometimes it's easy to do it this way, as you sketch in those parts, and then you go down the line and connect those other bits. It's just a bit quicker. You're not trying to show the whole detail, you're just trying to suggest some of the detail. Right, so we have tiles, and again I'm going to draw some individual ones, and then eventually we're just going to draw a bit of a jiggly line as we get down. And then start the line, and you'll find that that gives you a little variety of texture as we get further down too. There is a thing here that goes up actually into the roof line, so I don't want to put anything more on there. I'll just highlight that, and then I won't sketch into it, draw into it. So this roof is a series of, so halfway between there and there is there. The same is there. Now between those two, and then between those two again, and then go between those two. And then I'm going to put in just a few lines to suggest tiles. I'm not going to put loads in. When you're adding texture and stuff, you don't need to do every bit. You can just Really suggest it. Now obviously the tiles back here are probably, they're a lot smaller than there. So by making this one, like just one big one even there, gives you that sense of things getting smaller as they get further down. Now this area here at the back is actually quite hard because what you have is some quite regular shapes and then some quite irregular shapes. Now what I've done here is probably created a few problems for myself in a way. I've also made a mistake by adding a sort of balcony on the end of that one, but that doesn't matter, we can go with that. So again, what I'm going to do is simplify these shapes by making sort of diamonds. It's probably not great that, but to suggest. So they should be like that, shouldn't they? Those diamonds, not the way that I did it the first time. Anyway, like that. And then anyway, something like that. And then we have in a continuous line type exercise, my favorite ways of doing drawings. We're going to put this detail in here, and there is a signpost here, and another planter here, and then we're going to put that sign in, and then that sign in, and that's it. Okay. So back into the windows here, we have a window frame here, which doesn't go quite to the top, but almost. And there's a bit of a frame underneath it. Now this is it's got a bit there, and then two windows. So I find drawing with these super fine liners quite useful, because for me it's a bit like using a pencil, because if you go over the top with a thicker one, you can vary the line a little bit, so they give you a little bit of a safety net. And also because they're not massively thick, if you do put a line in the wrong place, it doesn't tend to draw the eye that much, if that makes sense. Right, so then we have this sign here. I'm going to make that outline a bit bigger, and then we're going to run all these lines of tongue and groove down. Again, I'm just eyeballing this, it's not that accurate, to this area where we have this massive window. There should be more perspective in that window, but anyway. So if we put the door in as reference first, that gives me a vague center point. And then we have a line that runs down there. Quite complicated, this little. And then that's 3 panes and that's 3 panes. So halfway between two, it's going to be about there. When it comes to filling in that door detail, I think I'm going to do that later. I've got to do the blue around there. Oh, home dog spawn. So let's do a little bit more of this bench, which is obviously quite a bit, should be a bit smaller than that bench because of the perspective, but it's not. And then we're down into this area, which again has been painted blue, and it shouldn't really be blue, but I don't think there's anyone bothered about that. Okay, so the platform itself, you can tell a lot of the story of the platform by actually some line work. So if I was to go in here and put a line that ran down there like that, and then reduce, feel like suddenly there's a point in a drawing where it stops looking bloody awful and it starts to coalesce a little bit. I feel like this is at that point. So on this bit here, I'm doing some boxes to show that spacing, but as I get further back it'll just become lines, and then even exaggerate the closeness of those lines again just to try and show a bit of perspective. I'm putting in some boxy shapes to describe the wall. And then here we have the ballast, which is made of small bits of stone, and again I'll put them in to demonstrate that. And then what we have is a rail. Now the rail is, I don't really know where to put that. I'll stick it here, and then I'll run it back there like that. I'll probably go over that with a thick pen. Now again, I'm gonna just do this almost sort of symbolically in a way, and then you've got these sleepers, and they're going to be here. And again, some of the stones. So now I've done that, I think I'm going to use my Fude Nib Pen. Now anybody who doesn't know what one of these is, you're missing out on a treat. Let me stand up so I can do this properly. So here is this pen, and it's got this end that, come on, focus on this, you beast, that flips up like that. And what you get is a much thicker line if you use it that way, and if you use it that way you get a thin line. Okay, so for a drawing like this, you can be quite big, you can be quite bold with the line work because it's quite a bold drawing. So what I'm going to do in the foreground is put this line in here, and then also put this one in. And then under here, there is this platform runs away a bit under here. So I'm going to, see, I'm using this it's quite gestural. I'm using it quite loosely. There is no substitute for playing with these. You hear him scratching at this. And then here there is going to be a suggestion of some forms and shapes, but the more regular lines are going to be, I should let that dry probably. I'm just going to use a tissue just in case there's any blobs on there, so that when I put my sleeve on it, it doesn't smear it everywhere. It's a bit weird working this way when you're filming, because what you want to do is turn the pad around, but you can't really, so okay, and then I'm going to go all the way down there and try and encapsulate a few of those details that I put in with the fine liner, because I don't necessarily want to lose those. Okay. Now there's a few of the bits that I can do here just to try and help tell the story. I don't want to go super fat with this, so I'm going to hold the pen a bit tighter. I'm going to try and put in a little line for the gutter. And again, as I go further back, I'll make that a tiny bit narrower. And then using the narrow edge again, put a bit of a line in here. Shadow, just to suggest that over there. Now there's certain parts here where you could work on these, work on some details without actually using the really fat pen. So I'm going to go in with a little bit of a larger fine liner, but not the Fude pen because that's just too wide. Those areas are here, and I think here. This area. There's actually a thing that goes across here that I completely forgot about, which is silly, but anyway. So I want this bench to stand out a little, so I'm going to just put a line around that. This planter, this sandwich board, anything that's basically in front of that building, I want it just to pop off a little bit. Like that, and I'm not going to bother with that. So further back we have a door here that I completely forgot about. We'll put that in, and then there's another one here too. Right, so we're not far off with this. There's a few different elements that probably need to go in. I mean, what I might do with the windows could either be done in black. In fact, I probably will do them in black. I might actually use the Fude Nib for that because that's quite useful for sort of windows. As you can see, it's pretty watery. It puts down a hell of a lot of ink, and that's why you have to be careful, because if you were to do this and then smear your hand across where you've coloured, it would pretty much ruin the picture. I wouldn't ruin it, but it wouldn't be pretty. So you have to be really careful using these Fude pens to ensure that you give the ink plenty of time to dry, or use a hairdryer if you can. I use a hairdryer more than your average hairdresser. So for the colour, I'm going to use this again, this Daniel Smith colour, which is a transparent Pyrrol orange. Pyrrol orange. And I'm going to just go in and directly paint in those signs. So there is a couple on here, and then we have this one on here. There's one on the back of there. This one here. Now there's also, it's pretty hammy. There you go. Some colours there. So I think it just needed a little bit of a colour pop, and you could also get some more soft orange. You don't have to be specific and pop that there. Now what you could do here, if you chose to, and I'm going to do it because why not, is put a few splashes there, just to add a bit of interest. That might be overkill. I'll just pull a few out. You don't need too much. And then once that's dried, I'll use a white pen and I'll use a white pen. Yeah, I'll put a number 2 in there. And then I think that's me done. The only other thing here is I'll maybe try and think about where the shadows, I mean, the shadows here are quite high above, but I might try and put a little bit of shadow just on this gable end, and a little bit of shadow going off that way, just to sort of suggest where there's a little bit of shadow under those benches, but then it can get a bit fiddly. So I won't do that. So one last hair dry. Right, I use these gel pens an awful lot. They're called a Jelly Roll Sakura. They'll come in different sizes. Anything below 10 just seems to be useless to me. I like to use the 10 one. So I'm going to have to write the word Gromont on here, which is not going to happen, I don't think. Yeah, I don't have enough room, so I'll do a kind of vague ... Same on that one. A few dots on the flowers. And then this is the easy one. This is the number 2. Now, there's other things you could do with white pens. You can also add in some sort of textures, a few highlights on things. You could go in and sort of suggest a bit of the rendering. Yeah, these are a lot of fun you can have with these, but I'm going to leave that at that. Yeah, happy with that. So that is a pretty rough and ready kind of sketch. I think it works quite well. I hope you enjoyed that. As you can see, normally we would go pen first and then paint, but in this case we've used a very rough pencil sketch and then gone in with the paint and then gone in with the pen again. But as you can see, sometimes it's a bit, you sort of dive between the two. So let me know if there's anything you want me to cover, or if there's anything that wasn't clear about that. I'd really like some feedback. I've got some other stuff to do here. I've got loads of other things that I could be talking about, whether it's urban sketching or sketching vehicles or boats or whatever. There's a lot of different techniques that I like to play with, and I'm happy to explore those along with you guys. So yeah, like and comment, subscribe. Cheers. We'll see you again. Thank you. Bye bye.